Right. Our next speaker is Mark. Mark's looking surprised. Okay. Thanks. I think you all know Mark. If you don't, this is your second life, isn't it? You were a mineralogist.
Yes, the Renaissance.
Yes. So, and in retirement, Mark is getting into more and more different groups of Diptera.
Yeah, esoterica. Yeah.
Right.
How do I use the? Is it just the point of
Yes.
slide? Okay. And
So you can use these buttons here.
Okay. Just all on the mouse.
Yes, and we've got the laser pointer on.
Perfect. Yeah.
And yeah, I think I haven't turned this off.
Well, hopefully
I'll
it's the next slide. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Zoe, for this opportunity to raise awareness of a somewhat understudied group. I'm just going to spend 10 minutes or so going through what we've started up. Hopefully this is all going to work. That looks familiar, at least. Yeah. Yeah, the Lesser Dungfly Study Group, just a few of us got together and thought we might give it a shot last year and put together a proposal before the DF committee that was to set up a fairly informal study group, not a recording scheme. Okay, this was a sort of litmus test in a way as to whether it could be taken further, and there are certain additional requirements to make it a recording scheme. But I just want to give you some background into the nature of these creatures themselves. I put on a few token black jobs here. I think that's Andrew Cunningham's. These are a couple of mine, and a few dissections. A local Ely dung heap, which I spent a year walking up and down. It's about the size of a tennis court, but there are 35 species of Sphaeroceridae recorded in this dung heap, including some quite uncommon ones. Here's some puparia on seaweed aggregates, and a carvac. So this is the sort of realm in which we're looking at, really. It's slightly non-standard, perhaps. Okay, so there is Martin Harvey very kindly organised the setup of the online access to the study group information. At the moment, it's still for me, it's still a work in progress. There is stuff to be downloaded there. I've uploaded some keys, but we hope to get more graphical stuff up there in terms of perhaps some pictures showing the key differences between the different genera. But what I can do is for the time being, I'm probably the person to contact with regard to keys as a first port of call. I'd be the person to contact. So we'll run through what's available. So the point of it, we thought, was to, as you can see, promote some sort of interest, raise awareness, perhaps. Most of you are aware of lesser dungflies, of course. Some of you may even have bothered to collect them. I don't know. Hopefully I can find out who has and hasn't. But we're interested in stimulating greater amounts of information on this understudy group in the UK. And you can see here what we'd like to do is to also engage people in focus studies of particular genera or even individual species at all life stages, really. Particularly larvae, and in this case we've got puparia. This is a coastal Sphaeroceride. It's Sphaeroceridae johnsoni, which I found up on the Norfolk coast a couple of years ago, and this was a non-native species that, in fact, its native range is the Pacific coastline of North America and Japan, but I found loads of it in Norfolk. And all stages. So this is an ephemeral environment in which it survives. But these are opportunists. This particular genus. Rather nice things to look at in all stages, in fact. And occasionally you get a parasitoid popping out instead of a Thoracochaeta. So we are interested in looking at all stages in the phenology, and also interactions with the other invertebrates as well. And one of the main points of the group, at least initially, is to help with identification and the recognition possibly of new species that are new to Britain, or perhaps new. So it is meant to be a place to go to. I'll tell you how to get there in a minute, to try and find out a bit more. We can easily provide you with more information, but it's up to you to tell us what you'd like. and we'd happily help you with that. And just carrying on the theme, why study Sphaerocerids in particular? And I was drawn to them because I like small. I was a crystallographer. I suppose I still am a crystallographer. So I'm looking at sort of sub 0.1 of a millimeter particles most of the time and mounting them on very fiddly mounts and shining X-rays at them. So this was a pretty natural attraction for me. Going small was really fun, and I love it. I absolutely love it, and I love the dissection that's involved. So that was how I was drawn to it. Although I did start with, of course, syrphids, and I'm still quite fond of syrphids. Preferably the smaller the better. So they're a fairly characteristic group. I put on the hind leg here, and one of the key features, they're actually the jizz. The way they move, actually, but also their general look is very easy to key onto. The wing venation is very obvious as well. There are 3 variants basically, and this, you see this, the metatarsus here is short and stubby. That's by and large very reliable. So they're actually easy to pick out from non-Sphaerocerids. For a lot of them, their phonologies are unknown. There are 145 species currently on the British list. And we've been accruing about a species, on average, a new species to Britain a year since the original key came out in 1988. The fauna, happily, is accessible even in midwinter. So I've been plodding around dung heaps, which are quite nice and warm, with associated pied wagtails and medipipits. You know, they're an important resource for winter birds. And the really attractive thing, apart from mucking around with different techniques, which you can do in a range of families, of course, but this is particularly suitable for these, is to use a variety of techniques. But the thing that was very attractive to me really was the quality of the keys that are available now. In fact, they've been available for a long time, but you do have to hunt for them. And so the study group is a resource now. We've collated a lot of Nearctic and Palearctic keys for Sphaerocerids. And I'm the person to contact with regard to those. So they're understudied, they're under-recorded for sure. 15 species listed in the 2016 review on age traits, of which 4 nationally scarce, provisionally nationally scarce. 1 is extinct. Well, actually, it isn't. Minilimacina secondaria was found by Ryan Mitchell and identified by Dave Bryce a couple of years ago from Berkshire, and 10 are data deficient. Very limited coverage in the UK, and not many of us seem to be studying them with gusto. So what are we missing? I go back to this one. It's one of my favourite surveys that was done in the late 80s by 4 or 5 very well-known entomologists. They published a paper on Sphaerocerids because the Sphaerocerids were very well represented in the database for the Welsh peatlands invertebrate survey. So about 300 stations. There are about 118 sites and 300 sampling stations all over Wales. And what's of interest, if we look at the bottom here, for example, what we might consider a relatively uncommon Sphaerocerid, Minilimacina viatrum, and to a lesser degree, Sphaeroceridae nana, there are masses of them were found in the survey all over Wales. Outside of Wales, very few were found. Okay. Conversely, if we look at what are designated as PNS species, in both cases, very few records were found in the survey in Wales, very limited distribution, hardly any found outside Wales. So similar story in and out of Wales for the 2 PNS species, but very different for these 2. And the Acalip trait review relied quite heavily in this case on the Welsh peatlands invertebrate survey. So I think we're missing a lot of, for example, this one is likely to be a lot more common and widely distributed. Okay, and it's not so difficult to identify. Similarly, this one is going to be quite widely distributed, likely based on the Welsh peatlands survey. So teasing out what is likely to be widespread rather than uncommon is important because we need to get reliable species status. Okay, we get to lovely places, and this is in South Devon. There's Dave there. I think that's me up there on a rather scratchy strand line, Pebble Beach. This is in Devon. I think it's one of Richard Lane's haunts in South Devon. Lovely leaf litter, mossy banks, ancient woodland. This is Thompson Common in Norfolk, pingos, tussocks. There's a nice tussock fauna associated with Sphaerocerids, and this is my local dung heap near Ely. It doesn't really get much better. Okay, so the challenge is, I've got to mention them. They're not so bad once you get your eye in. So most are small for sure, and most of them are dark or brown. Some are very, very small, less than 1 millimetre, and they often require dissection and sometimes slide mounting. I almost routinely slide mount the more difficult ones, and sometimes you have to clear them beforehand. Okay, you get a lot of them. Quite often they're quite hard to avoid, and sometimes when you're actually looking for targeting them, you get large numbers of them. Okay, so you do need to be patient. You have to have time on your hands to some degree, or make time. But actually sorting them is not so bad. These are all, this is some I took a photograph of some under my microscope. These are actually all Sphaerocerids, some Norbomias in here, the larger ones, 3 mils. This tiny one is actually also, this is Phylocaprella quadrispina, which is this one here. Here's an AA pin, for example. So it would make a bit of a mess of it if you used an AA pin on this. Okay, so I tend to slide mount this one's a fairly easy one to identify actually. But once you get your eye in, even amongst the non-Sphaerocerids, it's completely doable. But then you have to, having extracted them, you then have to work through them, which takes time. Okay, not all is dark. Okay, there are some quite brightly coloured, well, moderately brightly coloured, not quite Volucella inanus, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. So there are some that are quite identifiable. This one's a whopper, this Gigalimacina flaviceps, and they're quite doable. There are about a dozen or so that you can eyeball even in the field, but not many. And we're at 145. Okay, the resources, if anybody's at all interested, this is the 1988 Pitkin Key, which is a good start. It's certainly out where I started, but then I realised that I had to actually spend time because I was running into dead ends with some of the specimens I was looking at, and it was necessary to go, as it were, abroad. The taxonomy of the family has been updated since '88. As I say, we're adding about on average a species a year to the fauna, the British fauna. It's a good starting point, but you must be prepared to go beyond these shores, as it were. And it's worth it because the keys are beautiful if you have an eye for a key. These are Roacek's superb illustrations in many of his papers, which I have access to. If you're at all interested in particular families, genera within this family, then do come and get in touch with me. These are beautiful, and I'll show you how good they are because I dissected one species, this is a Rachyspoda anceps. I dissected some of the sternites out. It's a moderate sort of 2 mil fly, so moderately large. 8 sternites. You can see the match between the distinction between Rachyspoda cryptocheta and Rachyspoda anceps. The quality of the illustrations is excellent. Okay, well, I think it is anyway. I was really impressed how close the match was. And needless to say, we all have to grow up a bit. So delayed gratification, which my wife tells me is a sign of maturity. The act of resisting an impulse to take an immediately available reward, and we've seen some of the ones you can take straight away, in the hope of obtaining a more valued reward in the future. But you do have to be patient. So this is my rather modest setup at home, in my little room. It's bolted from the outside. And here are 2 Spilobias that are very similar morphologically until you dissect them. Here are the males. And this is taken on this microscopes and photographs, perfectly adequate for separating using the comb CT here on sternite 5 of the male. We can distinguish between the 2 species quite clearly, but other than that, it's quite demanding to do it. So be prepared to slide mount some. Certainly the Spilobias are worth slide mounting. Very eager to help people because people probably will need help with this family. And we reckon that you can send us staff, turnaround times sort of months really, depending on the number of samples you send us. I get hundreds. And it will be possible in some cases to send slide mounted material back, which I think is good for people to see dissected material, and we can return the whole specimens as well. So I'd like to thank these kind souls. Tony, Nigel, Judy, Andrew, Roger, Nick, Ryan, and actually Ivan as well, for sending us LDFs to identify or check. Ivan almost invariably gets them right. Please keep them coming. We'd love to have them. And I would say that LDFs, lesser dung flies, are a very good prelude to studying Sphaeroceridae. So I think for me it's been a natural progression. So it would be great to talk to you any time today or beyond. Thanks for your attention. I look forward to chatting.
Well, thanks very much, Mark. Do we have any questions from anyone in the room? No.
Yes. Hi, Martin.
If it makes things any easier, what Andrew does, as you well know, is to dump his whole catch into potassium hydroxide, just leaves it there. And so he's got lots of soggy things to look at, and he can see everything a lot more easy. So
Yeah.
he doesn't slide mount everything.
Yes.
You need to do it to start with, but
Yes.
once you get going, it's a shortcut.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Certainly with looking through. So if you're looking for the Spermathecae, for example, just we do a lot of chucking into KOH early on as well, and you can see it. But to get it actually presentable, if you want to publish stuff, then it's quite good to prepare some slide mounts of more atypical material or uncommon material. And it's really nice to be able to flip them over and look, because you can look right through them. As Martin says, by clearing. Yeah, you can just chuck them all in. We do. Yeah, but some people are not very happy. We have to ask people if it's okay for us to do that.
They don't look very pretty.
They don't look very pretty, and they're very delicate. You know, if you want to do anything with them afterwards as well, they can be quite delicate, these little flies. But yeah, exactly. That's certainly one of the things to do. Thanks, Martin. Hi, Phil.
I was just wondering, are there any British species which are not known from any other parts of the world?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
You might
Sorry.
be lucky if you...
No, not that I'm aware of. If anybody is aware of them, I don't think we've got anything that's, as it were, endemic. Not yet, anyway. But more work needed.
Any more questions? Oh, okay, we've got some online questions.
Oh gosh, I won't be able to cope with this.
My reading
Okay.
glasses on.
Right.
Okay. From Dave Kingsley, link to key on DF website or FB page. Have you? They should be on the. You've got a page on the.
Yeah,
DF
there's a
website.
record. Yeah, there is a. If you go to the DF recording section, I've put it up there, didn't I? At the beginning.
Okay.
And you should be able to click on it. We need to populate it more. More needs to be put on it, but it's only been up for a few months.
Yeah.
But
So,
people should come to me for keys in the first instance. I put my email up there, I think.
okay, and Agnes Krelling, would you be interested in receiving Sphaerocerids from the Faroe Islands? Species here often overlap with the British fauna.
That would be wonderful. I had one last year, actually this year, was sent by Nick Frideford from Fair Isle, and it turned out to be new to the British list. I dare say it had just been blown over like the birds in Scandinavia. But yes, certainly, yeah. If I can get in touch, she can get in touch with me on this email, which is in blue on this slide.
Okay, so Agnes, take a note of Mark's email, which is on the slide that's on the screen now. Okay, it's in blue at the bottom there. Right, next question. Jan Wilhelm van, oh dear, I can't. I'm struggling with your surname, Jan. Thanks a lot for presentation on this very interesting family. I'm studying this family for some years now in the Netherlands, using pitfall traps among bait also works rather well.
Yeah, we haven't done much bait work. We've done carrion work, but bait work we haven't done. So trapping with bait is something that could be fun to do, a bit more arduous.
You haven't said what you're baiting your pitfall traps with, Jan. So
That's probably fish or chicken's livers or that sort of fish heads and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Fingers. I don't know.
Right, we've got a thank you from Agnes, and Jan, if you want to speak further with Mark,
Yeah.
again, his email is on the screen now. Okay, I think that's it for
Lovely,
questions
thanks.
online.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Okay, thank you.